Some people don't realize how much private prison industry is profiting off of ICE detainees. In 2018, a leaked White House memo called for a doubling of the people in immigration detention to 80,000 per day. As of August 2016, 3/4 of the average daily immigration detainee population was held in facilities operated by private prison companies. To give context to how the private prison system has grown so tremendously, we have to understand its origins. After slavery, the Southern slave system was privatized, fulfilling the role slaves had filled working in the cotton fields and the coal mines for U.S. Steel Company. It became the world's first billion-dollar company.
The history of for-profit prisons goes way back. I mean, back really to the American Revolution. Our first penitentiaries in this country were meant to turn a profit. They were essentially factories where prisoners were laboring from dawn to dusk for private contractors. In the South, in particular, after the Civil War, prisoners were put to work on plantations, coal mines, laying railroad tracks. All the Southern prison systems were privatized. So prisoners were forced to labor for private companies, much like they had labored as enslaved people. This world is the world in which the founder of the Corrections Corporation of America started his career. A man named Terrell Don Hutto ran a prison plantation in Texas, and he later ran plantations in Arkansas at a profit to the state. He was really the last person to run a publicly run prison at a profit. He was approached a few years later by a couple of businessmen who proposed the idea. They knew him and knew his reputation for running prisons as a business. And they proposed the idea that they start a corporation where, rather than making money from prison labor, the prisoners themselves would be the commodities. And they would essentially be building prisons, and states would be paying them money to run their prisons, and they would trade on the New York Stock Exchange. So they started basically the modern private prison industry from there.
We talked to Sylvester Owino, who filed suit against Civic Corps because of their abuses.
Lots of things happen, as in lack of medical attention for detainees. Because of that, I've seen like a lot of detainees' health get worse. Some of them died. There was like abuse by prison guards.
Some of these abuses include overcrowding, leaving prisoners in isolation for lengthy periods of time, withholding medical treatment, and forcing detainees to work for no pay. Abuses also occur in transporting of prisoners in the private prisons. Vans do not have prisoner beds, toilets, or medical service, and can travel up to a week at a time.
The system, as we know, is broke. My case went to the higher courts 2 times, and they kept sending it back to the lower courts because the higher courts suggested that the lower courts made errors. So now, when he came back to the lower courts, the same judge that denied me said, no, I didn't make no errors. So given my situation, I have to fight my case. And that's what I did.
Civic Corps, Inc., formerly Corrections Corporation of America, and the GEO Group are 2 of the largest managers of private prison contracts in the nation. Divestment alone won't stem the tide. It is too easy for someone to come in and purchase the shares.
I do think that it's more than just divestment. I think it's like making sure that people are aware that, you know, your pensions, your 401k, like all this is invested in private prisons, that literally people are monetizing Black bodies, brown bodies.
Most difficult thing is that these universities don't advertise them. And so students or activists and organizers have to do a lot of background work, which includes like a Freedom of Information Act, going to different websites to find out where, particularly often it's through investment funds, through retirement funds. And so you have to start there and ask a lot of questions and sometimes directly ask chief investment officers, but they're not always forthcoming.
Just focus our efforts on divesting from prisons and detention centers. Like, that's obviously an amazing fight, but that doesn't that doesn't happen overnight. And so shifting the culture, shifting the way we think about prison and punishment, I think is an effort that we should do simultaneously, because once we sort of like dissect what it means to be in prison and what it means to be punished in a society, we're able to sort of even envision what it looks like to have a world without prisons, or having a world without caging people inside detention centers and prisons.
To make a real dent, money management groups like Vanguard would need to renounce their interests in those corporations that fund private prisons. Still, the divestment is a good start. Thanks for joining me. I'm Eddie Conway for The Real News.